Let's move on to strings. So there are many string functions in SAS. These string functions are pretty universally available in other languages, perhaps with other names. So if you know how to do it in SAS, if you understand what these functions are in SAS, you can jump over to Python, Perl, C, Java, whatever you like, and you're going to find pretty similar functions in any of these languages. Increasingly, we have to deal with a lot of text data. So we get comments, we get URLs, and that's a lot of string data that we're going to have to be processing. So these string functions are probably the most important part of today's lecture, and we really haven't talked about them yet. So remember, a string is just any sequence of alphanumeric characters. Here are some basic functions. So the first one that I'll talk about is length. So length is just going to tell us the number of characters in a string. So I have a little example. We'll input S, and I've made the string up to 20 characters, but not all these lines are 20 characters long. And I've just typed a sentence over a couple lines here. This is, for those of you who don't recognize this, this is the classic typing exercise. If you took a typing class, you probably had to type this sentence many, many times. So if we look at that first line, now is the time, I've computed the length of this and stored it in the lens variable. So that's 15 characters long. Now we could go off and count it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So that's what the 15 tells us. For all good men, you'll see that's a character longer, so it's 16 to come to the aid. That's 18 characters long. Of their country is 17. So that's what length does. It just tells us how many characters some string is long. Another really useful function is the substring function. And substring takes some string S and it's going to return another string. So it's going to say return beginning in position start num characters. So I've pulled two substrings just to give you an example. Substring S 5-3 means take string S, go to the fifth character, and give me 3 characters. So let's go take a look at that first line. What is the fifth character? So the N is 1, 2, 3, 4. The fifth character is that I. And now I want to return 3 characters. So what are the 3 characters? Well, it will be IS space. And so that's sure enough what that is. The next line, the 3 characters beginning at position 5 equals all. What about the next line? Well, it's going to be OME and then HEI for the next line. If you don't specify a third argument, so for example, if I say substring S comma 10, what that means is give me a substring beginning in position 10 to the end of the string. So if you look at that first line, the E is position 10, and it's going to give me all the way to the end of the line. So E time, ud men is the next line, and so forth. So that's what substring does. Upcase and lowercase convert some string. So let's look at upcase. I didn't give you lowercase, but you can imagine what that does. Upcase is going to convert all the characters in string S to uppercase. So let's go look at the result. This is especially useful because sometimes people are inconsistent. You're looking for a word. You know, I want to find the word angry. If I'm searching for sentiment that it would indicate if I'm mad. If somebody wrote the word angry, well, sometimes they might write it in all caps, sometimes they might capitalize it, sometimes they put it all lowercase. And if you're searching for that, you want to first make it uppercase so you don't have to search for all possible combinations of upper lowercase angry. So that's very useful. So those are some basic functions. Let's move on. Sometimes we want to paste strings together. So in some languages it's called paste. That's what R calls it, by the way. In SAS it's called concatenation. By the way, the cat command in Unix is short for concatenation because you're concatenating files. So how do you do string concatenation or pasting strings together? Well, there's an operator, which is one way to do this, and it's the way that I tend to do it by default. So if you use a double vertical bond, what that means is paste string B to string A. So I've put together a little example. Let's read in two strings, both with length 8. So we have two names. The first name and the last name. A happens to be the first name, B is the last name. So you got Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Barack Obama are my three names. Now I'm going to make a brand new variable. Let's call it cat1. Cat1 is A, paste or concatenate B. Let's go take a look at what we get. And here's what you get. You get something you don't want. So you get Bill space 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 Gates, Steve space 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 Jobs, and Barack space space Obama. The reason for this is these strings are stored with length 8, and what SAS does is it pads the end of the string with spaces. So Bill only takes up 4 characters even though it's an 8-character string. So that's why you're getting those extra 4 characters right there. So how do we get rid of those 4 characters? That brings us to another function which is called trim. So what trim does is it removes the trailing blanks from A. What you could think of is what SAS is doing is it's saying you could translate trim into substring A, comma 1, so start at the first position, comma length A. So it's going to return to you the number of characters in string A. So trim just does that, substring A, comma 1, comma length A for you. So let's take a look at cat2 now. What cat2 is going to do is it's going to trim both string A and string B, and then it's going to use the concatenate operator, double vertical bond symbol, to paste them together. So what do we get if we do that? Well, now we get Bill Gates without anything in the middle, Steve Jobs without anything in the middle, Barack Obama without anything in the middle. But that's not what we want either. Presumably we would like to have Bill space Gates. So how do we do that? Well, cat3 is one way to do it. So what I do in cat3 is first let's trim A, concatenate that with the string constant space, concatenate that with the trimmed version of B. And this gives us more what we want. So Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Barack Obama with the first and last name separated by a space. Well, doing this sort of stuff is really common. You often want to paste strings together and separate them by something. So SAS offers the catx function. So what does catx do? Well, catx will paste the sep string between all the strings that you list thereafter. Now, I've only listed 2 strings, but we could list as many strings as we like. So, for example, if I say cat x space AB, this will give us exactly what we want. So perhaps this is a bit easier than using the concatenate operator. Pardon me. Let's take a look at a few more string functions. Tokenizing and parsing strings. So a lot of languages call this tokenizing or parsing, and so if you Google those terms, you'll get a lot of search results. What tokenizing does, or parsing, is that it divides a string up into words also known as tokens. So some languages will refer to this as a token, other languages will call it a word. SAS tends to use the word word. And in essence, what it does is it divides that line up into these words or tokens based on a delimit character. So how do we do this in SAS? Well, we do it with the scan function. So what scan does is it says take string s, return word num. So I want word num based on these delimiters. Let's do a simple example. I've read in 3 sentences. So the first one is, this is a sentence. The dog ran fast. And the third one is, I do not like green eggs and ham. If we say word 1 is going to be scan s comma 1. What that means is extract the first word from string s. Word 2 then would be the second word by putting in a 2 in that second argument. So let's go see what we get. If I print out, I've extracted the first 4 words. Word 1 for sentence 1 is this, word 2 is, word 3 is a, and word 4 is sentence. One thing to note, word 4 is sentence as opposed to sentence period. You might expect that period up here to be part of word 4. The reason for that is that the default list of delimiters includes a wide variety of special characters and the space. And so what SAS does is it treats that period as a space, as a delimit character, and it gets rid of it when it does this tokenizing. Likewise with the second sentence and the third sentence, we just got out to the 4th word and we stopped. Okay, what would be an interesting exercise is if you modified this function and added a 3rd argument. So say comma, quote, space, quote. What that would say is SAS use only spaces as delimit characters. And if you did that, what you should find is that that 4th word is sentence dot, and the 4th word in that second sentence is fast dot, so fast period. So I encourage you to try that. So this is extremely important function to know about, and you will find it in most other languages. Let me give you another example of why this is so important. One situation where I tend to use this a lot is if I'm parsing a URL. So I've pulled a few URLs from one of the air miles files, and whenever you have a weblog, excuse me, a weblog consists of something like this: http://community.airmiles.ca/something/something/something. All right, so these URLs are organized in a very systematic way. Important pieces of information are separated by slashes. So let's extract the domain name. So that domain name would be that second token. And so let's go look at what you get. So the first token, if we extract the first word, now I'm saying use only the slash as a delimit character. The first word is http:/. The second word is this domain name. And then the third token is going to be some other stuff. The 4th token is what you would expect. Now sometimes I might want to strip off just the last part of this. So a .ca indicates a Canadian website. .es would be a Spanish website. .de would be a German website. And so I might use multiple scans. So I could scan just this word, the second token, using the dot delimiter, and then the third argument to that, or the last argument of that, would be the country of this website. And so that's something I often want to do. All right, so you can hopefully see where the scan function is going to be very useful to us whenever we have especially web logs, but also other text data. A few more string functions for you. Very often we want to find substrings within a string. So there are two functions. One's kind of a simple version of the other. So index is the simple version of the find function. So find is kind of the same thing as index, but it offers you additional options. I've never used find before. I've never needed those extra options. I think find is actually a new function in version 9 of SAS. So I'm pretty happy with index. But should you only want to look in part of a string, you'd use the find option. Okay, so let me give you a little illustration of this. Let's go back to that weblog from the Air Miles website. And so what you'll see is a couple things. So first off, all of these things go to the Canadian Air Miles community website. Now the way this website is organized is into two languages. So there's like two branches. If you click on English, then they have an English version of the website. If you're from Quebec, you probably want the French version, and so then there's a parallel version of French, of the website in French, and you click on that. So what you're going to see is this first slash after Community Air Miles Canada refers to whether you're on the English or the French page. Okay, so maybe I want to identify whether a record is on the English website or on the French website. One way to do this is to just search for the string French, string FR. Okay, so if I did index URL, comma, quote FR, what this is going to do is it's going to return the character number in the string where FR begins. So let's go take a look at this. Down below you'll see that, okay, in this particular instance there is an FR, and that must begin in position 30. If we counted all these characters, that F would be in position 30 and R would be in position 31. If SAS cannot find the string FR, it's going to return the value 0. So this offers me one way to determine whether or not there's an FR in the string. Just so if FR equals 0, that means FR is not in the string. If it returns any value 1 or greater, that means that it found FR in the string. I'll give you another example. After this English, French language indicator, the website's divided up into various sections. So you get a discussion page, a getting started page, a tricks page. So maybe I want to find whether or not this is a tricks visit versus a discussion or whatever else. All right, well, if I do, let's find the first occurrence of the word tricks, and here's what you get. So notice the first 4 or 5 lines get 0, indicating that these are not on the tricks page. The next lines return a value greater than 0, indicating that these are on the tricks page. Now, one more subtle point here. Doing what I did here is slightly sloppy, and here's why. Perhaps there is some string after this, the third part of the URL. So HTTP is the first part, then this piece, then FR. There could be some other stuff out here that has an FR in it. All right, so a better way to identify whether this is a French-speaking website is to first use the scan function. So let's take the third token, where tokens are separated by slashes, and that's going to return to me just this piece. And then let's test whether that's equal to the string fr. And if it is, we'll say, well, French is yes, otherwise French is no. All right, so that's probably a better way. It's definitely a better way than what I did up here. However, we're going to be using this index function, so I wanted to illustrate it with this data set. Okay, good.